Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. Tonight, Vlodymir Zelensky is back in the UK with his begging bowl out and has been given the massive red carpet treatment that you would expect from England. He has delivered a speech in front of the UK Parliament, and we're just going to go through it. I did another version of this video where I used the actual video from the speech, but oh my god, it is boring. It is like watching paint dry. He is not I don't know, to my mind anyway, he is not a charismatic speaker. So I thought instead it would be quicker and simpler for me to just go through the transcript. If you watch the video transcript, you will see it basically open with a whole bunch of sort of hand jobbing from Lindsay Hoyle, the UK Speaker of the House, which is the head of Parliament essentially, or the guy who, I guess he runs the Parliament for, my US bros, if you don't get it. A bit like, our version of Nancy Pelosi. And, there was just lots of back rubbing and just, everything's like so awesome, And then finally, Vlodymir himself took the stage. And, oh my God, it was just, I could feel myself growing erect with pride. With every word that he spoke, I was more and more willing to give up more of my money, time, energy in taxes, just whatever, so that this country on the other side of Europe that up until a year ago I had literally never heard anything about, so that they could survive against the evil Putla. Yes, because everybody knows that since World War II, every single military conflict is basically a reframing of World War II, and we have to stop Putla. We have to stop him now. There's no telling what will happen if he is not stopped. He might go all the way to Ireland, dear ladies and gentlemen. He's a maniac. He must be stopped. He wants all of Europe in his scaly grasp. And so, therefore, of course, I was extremely glad and gratified and just, oh my God, I just can't wait to give more money to Ukraine. So the speech starts off with, the usual sort of pablum. He's like, very, very happy to be here. You guys all rule. It's amazing. I was here a couple of years ago and had tea with Lindsay Hoyle, and it was great. We really like your English, your bold history. I guess those are the good parts of our history that the English can be proud of, unlike all the other parts of our history that the English are not supposed to talk about and definitely not be proud of anymore, because it's all white supremacy. Plus la change, I guess, right? It's a good thing there are still parts of history that England can be proud of, and those parts of history exist exactly between 1942 and 1945. That's it. That's basically the only part of history that England can be proud of, and it will be trotted out every time they need you to back some kind of military conflict. I have come here to stand before you on behalf of the brave, on behalf of our war heroes who are now in the trenches under enemy artillery fire. Yeah, well, okay. Yes, it's a war. And despite my flippant attitude, I actually feel very, very badly for the Ukrainians at the moment, especially the people who did not vote to have a war with Russia. I mean, who does vote for a war, realistically speaking? The people up top, they do the voting, they do the negotiating. It is the people on the ground who suffer, and the Ukrainians are definitely suffering, especially if the latest casualty figures from Mossad are to be believed. He then does a bit of a humble brag. Thank you for your bravery. He's thanking the English. I'm not really sure how many of the English were actually involved in this bravery. Perhaps the people who actually went over there and fought and died. I don't know whether you could classify paying more taxes as bravery. Possibly, if that's what he means. He didn't put it that way, of course. Perhaps a sort of thank you to the English people for paying more taxes so that we can get money and weapons would have been nice. But, he clearly wasn't talking to me, or probably to you, dear viewer. Are you a parliamentarian? Did you get to sit in the big hall and, witness the speech? No, of course you didn't, you fucking pleb. What even, why even have an opinion? No one's asking you whether we're going to have a war in Ukraine. We're a democracy, goddammit. No one's asking your goddamn fucking opinion. Shut up and vote. Thank you all very much from all of us. Yes, please. That is for you. All applause for you. There was, of course, applause. Everyone was like, oh. Honestly, the look on fucking Rishi Sunak's face was like pretty, I don't know, mate. He looked like he was about to fucking sweep Zelensky up in his arms and like take him off to a fucking gay sauna or some shit. I mean, just the love in his eyes. It's pretty creepy. Look, not necessarily saying that there might not be valid reasons to support the Ukrainians, especially at this point now that World War III is definitely going to happen, right? And everyone's got to transition from the, oh, was this a good idea to start this war in the first place, to the, okay, we're having a war, so, which side are you going to be on now kind of like situation. But, I don't know, it comes off a bit ick to me. He thanks Boris Johnson for basically getting the coalition of the willing, the coalition of friends is the way that he puts it, off the ground when the invasion first happened. And of course, everybody understands that our Congress knew absolutely different times. Our nations defended freedom in the Second World War. Wasn't Ukraine part of the USSR during the Second World War? Hadn't the Holodomor happened by that point? How can you say that Ukraine was defending freedom? Is he making some reference to Stepan Bandera? I don't know. But he's basically saying, both Ukraine and Britain, we've fought against the evil totalitarians, I guess, except for the totalitarians that comprise the USSR. I mean, the English did align with the USSR during World War II. So maybe it's just a tortured metaphor. We will always come out on top of evil. This lies at the core of our, but also your traditions. However, the horizon never stays clear for a while. Once an old evil is defeated, the new one is attempting to raise its head. Oh, it sounds like there's going to be a lot of war. Do you have a feeling that evil will crumble once again? I can see in your eyes now we think the same way as you do. We know freedom will win. We know Russia will lose. Well, I hate to say this, Vlodymir, old chum, but wars are not fought by the looks in people's eyes. Wars are fought by men who suffer, bleed, and die for a military objective. And I really want to know how they are planning to actually fight this war in any kind of practical sense. It seems to me that Ukraine is largely out of troops at this point. Obviously, I'm not privy to Ukrainian military intelligence, but going off the numbers that have been released by Mossad, Ukraine is basically out of soldiers. So where they're going to get the military force from to keep persecuting this war is anybody's guess. And if I had to make a guess, the only hope that they have is to get NATO embroiled in the larger war with Russia, which looks like it's definitely on the cards at this point. And this is where it starts getting interesting. Zelensky starts talking about the world order. Ah, yes. That favorite conception of mine and yours and everyone else's, when this guy from a tin pot Eastern European country suddenly catapulted to the status of a major international leader starts telling everyone about the new international order that they are going to enjoy without getting a chance to vote on it or have any meaningful input. Of course, these are the best kinds of orders, right? Why do you want to ask the people? They'll just make the wrong decision. We've already decided, right? We just have to convince or possibly coerce the people involved. And we really know that the victory will change the world, and this will be a change that the world has long needed. So the destruction of Russia is a change the world has long needed. How long are we talking here, Vlodymir? 50 years since the end of the Second World War, since the collapse of the USSR, since Russia sort of decided to start bucking the West. I don't know. The United Kingdom is marching with us towards the most important victory of our lifetime. It will be a victory over the very idea of war. Press an X to doubt there. After we win together, any aggressor, it doesn't matter big or small, will know what awaits him if he attacks international order. Any aggressor who will try to push the boundaries by force, who will inflict destruction and death on other peoples, who will try to endure his dictatorship at the expense of other people's blood in criminal and unprovoked wars as the Kremlin does, any aggressor is going to lose. Aha. So I presume this does not mean Western wars of aggression, such as, Iraq, Libya, Kosovo. No, right? This will be any wars of aggression that go against the West. And since every single war that goes against the West is by definition a war of aggression, in a way this is basically saying we're going to screw over anyone who crosses us. Ladies and gentlemen, we have already achieved remarkable results, and we must make every effort to turn our achievements into the foundations of the future global security architecture. The world needs your leadership, Britain, just as it needs Ukrainian bravery. I didn't think Britain was really leading the world. Is he being serious, or is he just sucking up to the British? Hard to say. He then goes on to say that Britain and the United States formed a true coalition of friends. Anyone who was around for the Iraq War will be familiar with this language. During the Iraq War, it was the coalition of the willing, because they couldn't get sanction from the UN. So they're like, oh, well, screw the UN. We'll just make our own group of countries and do it anyway. Because that's how an international order works, ladies and gentlemen, right? You don't wait for the decision of the international ruling body. No, fuck it. You just do what you want, and then afterwards call it a new international order. Your help was preventive. We must take these principles of preventive aid to those who are threatened with aggression and preventive sanctions against those who threaten aggression as basic principles of the world anti-war policy. Now, this is a very, very interesting formulation. This is a bit like pre-crime for countries. So basically, any state that is being threatened by countries that the West deems enemies must be preemptively given weapons. Any states that threaten or are perceived to threaten those countries must be sanctioned before they get a chance to go to war. Now, this basically sounds like a great way to start wars literally everywhere. Doesn't sound like there's going to be any negotiations. It will be sanctions and giving arms to the enemies of your enemies in what will probably result in a massive global conflagration. Some people get the feeling that this is exactly what certain interested parties actually want. But of course, that's a conspiracy theory. Who would possibly want war? Nobody, obviously. We put together a powerful sanction coalition, and your leadership is protecting the international legal order through sanctions against a terrorist state that cannot be questioned. Okay, that his English is really mangled. Look, I know Zelensky's not a native English speaker. I'm not dunking on him because of that, but that is rather confusing. And we have to steadily continue along this way until Russia is deprived of any possibility to finance the war. Right. So they want to completely collapse the Russian economy. I mean, this is nothing new. This was the stated aim from the get-go. Most importantly, together with the G7, we brought about coalition of values that protects the rules-based world order and human rights, a coalition that will work in such a way that over time, there will simply be no gray areas in the world in which human life doesn't matter. That sounds very much like they're going to wipe Russia off the map. Really, I mean, and people wonder why the Russians keep saying that from their perspective, this is an existential threat. Shit like this is why they think it's an existential threat. And generally speaking, you don't want nuclear-armed states to be in a position where they feel like they are under existential threat. In order for it to be so, there must be justice. Anyone who invests in terror must be held accountable. Anyone who invests in terror. Is that like some weird ESG thing where they're going to start sanctioning anyone who can be connected to Russia's industry? Anyone who invests in violence must compensate those who have suffered from terror, aggression, or other forms of state violence. Is this, again, his way of saying they're going to start confiscating money from companies that have previously done any business with the Russian regime? I mean, they do need new ways to raise money. are proposals for the creation of the special tribunal of the crime of Russian aggression against Ukraine and special compensation mechanism, which will compensate war losses at the expense of Russian assets, are based on such principles. Right, so basically they are saying that they want to drag the entire Russian government before a war crimes tribunal, and they are going to confiscate all of the assets that have previously been freezed in the West, and give that money to Ukraine. I think it's highly likely that actually this has already happened. There have been billions and billions of dollars of Russian assets that have already been seized by the West, and my suspicion is that these are already being liquidated and the money handed off to the Ukrainians. What are the Russians going to do about it? Bomb London? But, of course, this has had an incredibly negative effect on the trust of the Western financial system. No country is going to leave their gold in London if they know that the West could turn on a dime, something could happen, and boom, suddenly all of your assets get confiscated. This is not how this kind of stuff is supposed to work. He thanks the UK for the tanks. He says he wants long-range missiles. I'm sure that's going to stabilize the situation a lot. And Zelensky then basically goes on to talk about meeting the king. How much he values his Air Force pilots, saying that they are all kings in their own right because there are very few of them. And then he gives to Lindsay Hoyle a gift of a Ukrainian fighter's helmet signed with a bunch of slogans on it, which presumably was worn by the ghost of Kiev in the opening stages of the war. That, fighter pilot that downed so many Russian fighter jets, which was later found out to be a complete propaganda fabrication. So it looks like the war is on, bros. World War III is on. If the UK does indeed give in to Zelensky's request for fighter jets, for example, where are these fighter jets going to be based? I can't believe that there are many intact airfields left in Ukraine. Modern fighter jets also require a large amount of logistical support. So where are they going to be based? If they base them in Poland and they then use these jets to strike inside Russian territory, this is going to spread the war to Poland, which of course will then trigger Article 5, which means that the rest of NATO can get fully involved rather than just sort of being involved under the table as they are. And on the back of this speech, of course, Rishi Sunak has instructed the Defense Secretary to look into providing jets to Ukraine, saying they haven't made the decision yet, but they're looking into it, and it must be a long-term solution. Well, as I said, where are these jets going to be? It sounds like everyone's still sort of doing the tiptoe. From the perspective of the realists in the Foreign Office, they might realize that Ukraine is already done, and basically, unless the US throws the full force of its military might into the conflict, there really isn't much chance of salvaging the situation. On the other hand, the war could trundle on for many years. What may not be possible now may be possible a year from now, or maybe in the summer when the ground hardens up and it's more practical to launch some kind of offensive back against the Russian lines. Anyway, if you enjoyed this video, please like, share, and subscribe and all that good stuff. And I'll see you in a couple of days. Good night.